Dear relationship cynics and relationship romantics, my name is Monice, and you are listening to the Romantic Cynic podcast. On this week's episode, I wanted to talk about liars and truth tellers. Last week, I had released a short called The Liar. And The Liar isn't about being in a relationship with someone that is a liar. It's about being in a toxic relationship where you turn into the liar. So I hope you join me on today's episode where we might mix in some laughter, maybe some tears, romance, and of course some cynicism. Welcome to episode 11. This week, I wanted to talk about liars and truth tellers. I have experience in both. And I wanted to go over why we lie, or why is there a need to lie in relationships. Now, before I jump in with my example, I wanted to go over a little bit about this book that I am reading called The Games People Play by Dr. Eric Berne, written in 1964. And the content is still relevant today. So what it talks about with the games people play, it's not exclusively about relationships that we play against one another to either manipulate or strong arm or anything like that. I haven't read the second part of the book. I've only read the first part of the book where it talks about, the transactional analysis of the games we play. And so this is something that all of us do on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't matter if we are in a relationship. It doesn't matter if it's family, friends, or even interactions at work. So it talks about how every one of us has three egos. We have the adult ego, the parent ego, and the child ego. And sometimes the parent ego will pop up, or the adult or the child will pop up even interchangeably while we're having interactions with people on a day-to-day basis. Just a very basic, just to give you an idea of the games that we play. So the very basic one is, he talks about, the convention of, we asking someone, how are you? And we expect them to say, oh, I'm fine, or oh, I'm good. And that's kind of like the end of that transaction or that game. So it's not all about relationships. And again, I haven't gotten into the second part. So the second part is all about just the games. One I found already very interesting because he does talk about the analysis of it. It's called If It Weren't For You. And I loved that game that he picked out just because all of us have played it at some point in a relationship, probably more likely in unhealthy relationships, or even where you may experience being in a healthy relationship, but you kind of have a moment where you're like, well, if it weren't for you, I would be doing X, Y, and Z. And so that's the whole point about this game. So he compares a wife and a husband where she tells the husband, well, if it weren't for you, I would be a ballroom dancer. And that is the example in the book. Turns out, she believes that the husband is very overbearing and he doesn't allow her to do all these things. So she continues to blame him if it weren't for you. So I did find that really fascinating. I will share some more examples as podcasts, as I record more episodes and the content is relevant to some of the games that I'm learning that us humans play. So I wanted to kind of briefly give you a background of this book just because it has some relevancy with my relationship with my former my ex-husband. So I can tell you that I distinctly remember the first time I lied in that relationship. I don't condone lying at all, but I do understand that sometimes we do that to protect people, especially with the little white lies. But with this particular lie that I told, it wasn't even like a bad lie. It was just this it was a feeling of anxiety that he gave me, and it was a feeling of being like I was scolded and being treated as if I was a child. So, just to give you a background, when we were first kind of started dating, I remember being at his house and I think I was doing laundry. I think we were living together at the time and I was doing laundry, and I remember having the dryer going on. So he calls me, I answer the phone, and so he and I are chit-chatting and hears the dryer going off in the background. And he basically said to me, "What is that noise that I hear in the background?" And that's kind of how he said it, with that type of tone and intonation. And it was very, I had to pause because I felt like, the feeling that you had when you're a kid and you did something wrong, and you did something wrong, and your parent says, "What did you do?" Or are you the person who let the dog out, or broke the dish, anything like that. But you remember that feeling of anxiety, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm about to get in trouble." So what usually happens? A lie comes out of our mouth and we say, "No, that's not true," or we just deny it. And so the way he treated me in that moment and the way he talked to me was very much like the parent. So I am not proud of it at all, but just because I felt like I was about to get in trouble for something that I really felt like I shouldn't have gotten in trouble for, I lied. I think I told him that I wasn't even home or something like that. And I mean, it was just it was a stupid lie to tell, but I felt like I had to say it because he would have thrown kind of a fit. I mean, he always accused me of being irresponsible and like I couldn't take care of myself, and I always had to have supervision to do anything, including the laundry. He would get really annoyed if I did the if I turned the dryer on, because he's like, "Well, I really need to be home just to make sure that you don't start like a lint trap fire," things like that. So I wanted to share that story, but I also am going to link back to the book. So as I'm reading this book, I always like to compare like real life examples just so I have more of a perspective. And with him, he always took on the parent ego. Very rarely did I see the adult ego, and very rarely did I see the child ego. I saw more of the adult ego because of how just responsible he was when it came to certain things. But it wasn't just me he was like that with. He was like that with everyone. He had the parent ego, I'd say like 80% of the time, even in our relationship. Though, so that's kind of how my trend started, of me just turning into the liar. Never proud of it. It was hard to be honest with him because the times I was honest, and I would try to say it in a respectful way so it wouldn't hurt his feelings so much. It's another reason why we tend to lie to loved ones or family or friends, is just that we don't want to hurt we don't want to hurt their feelings. And so I remember he had made dinner one night, and I made a comment, just saying like, what could have been better about the meal, but he wanted my complete honesty. And he got so upset and so hurt by the fact that I didn't like something that he made. And again, I really tried to say it as nice as I could without being so overly critical, but he just took it completely personally. And I think that's another reason why we tend to lie, is because some people take things so personally and they feel like they are this perfect example of a human being, especially in toxic relationships. They feel like they are the perfect human being, that there's no need for them to change. And what you see is what you get. And my absolute favorite, and when I say absolutely favorite, I actually mean I'm sarcastically, because I hated this comment a lot, was, "It's just the way I am, so you're going to have to deal with it." It's not okay to say that, just because if you are so close-minded and feel like you are almost superior to other people. It's very childlike. I know for one, I even at this state, like at least in my life right now, like I continue to evolve and I continue to try to be the best version of myself for, for myself, for my family, for my friends, and for my loved ones, the people that I care the most about. And so lying is just never the answer, but at the same time it's like, where do we draw that line in our relationship? Now, I'm sure those of you have experienced that type of anxiety and that type of maybe even trauma from a toxic partner, because you felt like no matter what you said, you couldn't be completely honest with the person just because their ego got in the way. And I think that's another big part of it. Like, our ego shouldn't get in the way of us trying to be better. Now, I know trying to be honest in that relationship was difficult, because I felt like in order for me to kind of be a little sane in that relationship, and for me to live day to day, I had to lie, and it wasn't a pretty side of me. It's not something that I was proud of, and it was something that I really just disliked about myself immensely. And I can even go further into how it had a residual effect on, my family as well. And this is something that I have admitted to them. But during that relationship, I felt the need to not be completely truthful to my parents, because I didn't want them to worry about me. I didn't want them to know just how miserable I was, and just how I disliked being in that relationship. I know some of you are probably thinking, well, why were you in that relationship for so long? It's because I had faith and somewhat hope, I guess you can say, in that relationship, thinking that maybe someday he would want to change. Not that I put emphasis on forcing him to change, but when you see the potential of someone that you love, you want to give them as much effort and as much leeway, and at times as many excuses as you can possibly give them, until it just gets to a point where, like, okay, well, this is not working anymore. So I wouldn't be completely truthful to my parents, because again, I didn't want them to worry. After that relationship was done, and I was able to, move on in a positive way. I've had conversations with my mom, and telling her, I said, by the way, this is what really happened, and this is the reasons why. And I apologized for it. And again, it's not something I'm proud of, and not any one of us should feel like there should be a need to lie, especially because our partner makes us believe that maybe there is some reason as to why we should. And again, it goes back to how they treat us, right? And there's a much better way of talking to someone than making them feel like they're less than. And then, I mean, I can even say that, like, I felt less than in that relationship quite a bit. But other reasons why, we tend to lie is, you know, it became a habit of mine. And once I got out, like, I have been on this path to try to be as honest as possible. And I try to say it, I try to tell people, you know, my truths in a loving way. And so it's something that I continuously work on a day-to-day basis, where I don't want to be the liar anymore. And I feel like, because of my journey for the last two, almost 3 years, I feel like I'm at a place, and I'm in peace with myself, where I'm like, okay, I could be truthful, and people aren't going to be so upset and so hurt. I know with being at one point that liar. And I hate saying that. I hate the fact that I was that person, but I felt like I had no choice. And I guess that's another part of it. It's like we all have a choice to either be truthful or to be honest, but at the same time, especially, in a toxic relationship, we can be as honest as we can, but if we're with a partner that just doesn't understand or just doesn't want to admit that maybe there's some flaws in the relationship or there's some flaws of who they are, admit to yourself, the lies pop out, and being truthful in those moments, I had learned, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this, where the truth didn't matter because sometimes their ego or or what they believed to be their own truth was far more relevant and far more important than yours. I don't condone lying. I'm a firm believer of being honest, even in the smallest things, and even little white lies, I believe are still detrimental to the health of a relationship. And I think that's the whole purpose of it. If you are with a person that cannot accept being told the truth, and you say the truth in such a loving, or you try to say it in a loving, respectful manner, and they just get so offended by it, then how can you really move forward, or how can you two work together to become a better couple? And sometimes people are just like that no matter what. I feel as today, I watch, I see relationships, and especially with like this toxicity of just relationships in general, and all this narcissistic behavior, from one partner to or the other partner, where being honest isn't it's people say they want honesty in a relationship, but if they feel like it will hurt their feelings at the end of the day, they don't really want it, especially when they have to look and self-reflect on themselves. People don't want to, some people can't admit that there's things about themselves that they can work on. And I feel like all of us should collectively, or all of us should strive to be better versions of ourselves. All of us should strive to continue to evolve. And some people are just so stubborn and set in their ways that there's no moving forward. And with those relationships, if one partner is willing to move forward and evolve, and you have another person who's just stuck in this one particular period of time, and that's where they live their entire lives, then you guys are not compatible with one another. Start learning how to tell the truth with the smallest little things. It takes a lot of work to just be completely honest with someone. But if you want to work on things in your relationship, and you want to have a healthier relationship, or even or maybe you're not in a relationship, but you just want to work to be the best version of you, start with the smallest little truths. Maybe seek truth about yourself. Sometimes I feel like we can't always see the truth of who we are. Some people can, some people can't, but I really believe that it really starts with you as a person, learning to be truthful of who you are, what you have, maybe your abilities or lack thereof, and start with that. Start with you first. Now, if you want to start being honest in relationships again, have that conversation with your partner. I think that's probably a really important key start is, sitting down and saying, hey, we tell little white lies, so let's work together to not have to have a need to tell little white lies. And I think that when you do that, you become a stronger couple, and you're able to face things, even little moments of adversity together, on such a stronger path, that being honest is going to come naturally for you, and you're going to see just how impactful and how much trust you gain with each other. So I don't recommend being, I don't recommend the liar route anymore. I recommend the truth teller. Be unafraid to be honest. It might sound like it's a lot of work, and it might sound like it might not go over so well, but it will. It's something that we should strive for in a relationship. No more little white lies. Talk to your partner, and hopefully your partner is on the same wavelength as you, and hopefully your partner's understanding, and hopefully you can have an open dialogue of working on honesty. You'll be quite surprised that the level of honesty that you two have together is in direct correlation to the level of trust that you build as well. So I hope that today you found some value in the truth, on being a truth teller, and trying to move forward on seeking that type of relationship with your current partner. So my closing words are this to you: be kind to yourself, know your self-worth, continue to evolve to be the best version of you. If you're in a relationship, a healthy relationship, hold your partner close and tell them how much you appreciate them and how much you love them. If you're not in a relationship, guess what? That's okay. Continue to work on being the best version of you. Thank you for listening. And as always, yours truly, the Romantic Cynic.